Number 6. The argument's conclusion follows logically if which one of the following is assumed. Okay, so this, of course, is a sufficient assumption question, not a necessary assumption question. In other words, what this is saying is, if you assume this thing, oh, iPad, that looks good. If you assume, then, we win. We have proven the conclusion, we are done. Whereas a necessary assumption question, of course, is saying, if this conclusion is true, then it must have been true that this assumption was true, or more likely, if this thing you haven't even thought about happens to not be true, then your whole world falls apart. So here, this is the sort of first one of these we're looking at in the test. There are more common on the recent test. Yeah, that looks great, and I've run out of undo. What will my relatives think? Okay. Anyway, an undergraduate degree is necessary for appointment to the executive board. Okay, so that, not a sufficient type statement, a necessary type statement, as is given away by the word necessary. And if I were to map that out, that would say, if you're appointed, then you must have an undergraduate degree, because if you do not have an undergraduate degree, there's no possible way you could have been appointed. Fine. You don't necessarily have to map this out at this point. That seems sort of commonsensical and the sort of thing you could just slot in your real-world matrix. Further, no one with a felony conviction can be appointed to the board. Okay, again, fairly common sense. If felony, then you do not get on the board. No appoint. So if you've been appointed, you must not have a felony. Okay. Thus, Murray, this is like a Brooks and Reiner routine. An accountant with a bachelor's and a master's degree. So he has the undergraduate degree. That's not going to stop him. But how's his felony record? Well, it says down here that he has a felony conviction, and then it's saying that's why he cannot be accepted for the position of executive administrator. Well, at first glance, this seems like somewhat airtight logic, right? We've got, okay, this basically just doesn't apply to him. We can get rid of that, because, that's like saying he's got to have a head to be appointed, and what do you know, he is a head. So, fine. We don't need to worry about that. That solves itself. The master's degree is nice, Murray, but now, it's really the felony conviction is what we're looking at. And what we know is, well, if you have a felony, you cannot be, appointed to the executive board, right? So how is this not already airtight? Well, let's just make sure we're reading this carefully. That, we're trying to say that in the conclusion, if we were to say it's an if-then statement, and note I have thinned the pencil, so it will be slightly less hideous. If you have a felony, you cannot be appointed to executive administrator, whereas up here, it was executive board. Now, common sense would say that the executive administrator is either on the executive board or is held to at least as high a standard. And you might not even notice that gap. And if you don't, that might be okay. Because the important thing to notice is that you don't notice. In other words, that if this argument seems really airtight from the get-go, the right answer is going to basically saying, this thing you assumed is like this. It really is. So with that in mind, let's look at the answers. And this argument all seems, I'll just say, very sane, right? It is not insanely optimistic. It does not say that if you don't have a felony, you will be on the executive board. They have tighter standards than that, we assume. So we don't need the right answer to be crazy to work. So, A, anyone with a master's and without a felony conviction is eligible for appointment to the executive board. We don't care. Really, if we were to take a role in this, we're the man that Murray beat up, hence his felony conviction, who was on the executive board. let's say, does not want to be administered by Murray, and is really trying to keep him out of this position. That's not a slam dunk for that guy. That's really talking about, that's focusing, that's accentuating the positive a little too much. That's focusing on the people who do not have felony convictions, right? We want to assume something about the people maybe who do, or perhaps just the count and say Murray. Okay. B, only candidates eligible for appointment to the executive board. Well, I already like this, and one reason I already like this is because only candidates who can do this is laying down the hammer in some way. It's being restrictive, and we need something to be restrictive because we're trying to keep Murray from being our executive administrator. Perhaps our name is also Murray, and, it gets awkward. Okay, so if you're only candidates eligible for appointment, the executive board can be accepted for the position of executive administrator. Well, that sounds very reasonable. And if you were to map it out, it would sound even more reasonable because, of course, the only is sort of a then. So that says if you're executive administrator, then you must have been eligible for appointment to the executive board. Which means if you're not eligible for appointment to the executive board, you are not eligible to be the executive administrator. And we, of course, know that Murray, a known felon, is not. I should not tease Murray about this. It could have been something, perhaps he was a conscientious objector. In any event, yes, he cannot be appointed to the board, so he cannot be the administrator. Looking good. Let's look at the rest. An undergraduate degree is not necessary for acceptance. Again, that's happy talk. We're not looking for happy talk here. If Murray did not have a felony conviction, he would be accepted. Again, in a weird way, that's happy talk. That is sort of insanely optimistic, because it's always insanely optimistic to assume there's only one thing that's causing you to fail. And then E, the felony charge on which Murray was convicted is relevant to the duties of the, no, that is far too reasonable and sort of real-worldy, and no, we're really just looking for something that bridges the logical gap. And let's say, that I could see being one that someone who is maybe thinking commonsensically did pick. Let's say that is true, that his felony charge is relevant to the duties of that position. It, again, never said that the felony has to have anything to do with it. Let's put it this way, I could see arguing for E if B wasn't there. I could see keeping E. I could see keeping E and B and putting a question mark next to this and coming back to it if you get into sort of a tunnel. I could totally see someone getting attached to E. Their common sense can't be sort of turned off, and they can't see that, okay, B is just logically hit this button and this happens, and we're really just sort of, linking phrase X up here to phrase Y down here with a little if-then line. That goes like that. But yeah, that is a little too much common sense assumptions have to be made for that to nail anything shut.